So hello, museum families, and welcome to RBCM at Home Kids, a play date through screens across British Columbia and the world. The previous sessions are recorded and you can find them on our Royal BC Museum YouTube page. And we have I think about 51 so far. So you could spend a whole weekend watching, watching all the sessions from the past year. So my name's Chris O'Connor, and I'm a learning program developer at the Royal BC Museum. The museum and my home is on the territory of the Lekwungen-speaking people, the Songhees and Esquimalt nations, here in Victoria on Vancouver Island. I'm an uninvited guest on this territory. I'm grateful to live, learn, and raise a family on this land. So first off, happy Trans Visibility Day. March 31st is a day to celebrate the important contributions of trans folks in all communities around the world. My kid is trans. Being trans means many things, but for Asa, my kid, that means they're non-binary, which means they don't identify as a boy or a girl, and they use they, them pronouns. Asa has contributed a lot in many ways, including to RBCM at Home Kids. They, so pronouns, they created the artwork for many of the sessions over this past year. And as today is the 1-year anniversary of RBCM at Home Kids, we started on April 1st of last year. I wanted to have some of the early signs behind me here to celebrate the program. So we just got a green screen here at the museum. So I'm using my green screen, and these are some of the signs that Asa created, and some of the signs of the early sessions at RBCM at Home Kids. And also, as the program is becoming a toddler, starting in on its 2nd year of life, and we all know that toddlers ask lots of questions, today is all about questions. And I've invited someone who's really good at answering questions, Bronwen Hudson. Bronwen is part of our communications department here at the Royal BC Museum, and specifically, she looks after all the social media channels. So anything on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram that you've seen of late from the Royal BC Museum, it's been because of Bronwen. So thank you and welcome, Bronwen. We're so glad that you're here. Welcome to RBCM at Home Kids.
Thank you so much for that. I have to immediately say that I do not feel like I'm very good at answering questions, but I feel like I'm great at asking more questions. And that's something that I'm really excited to talk about today, and how exciting it is to have people who are interested in asking questions. And I'm so excited to be part of an institution that can help people find answers, but also it helps us all further our own questions. And that's why I'm really excited about that.
One of my first questions is why have museums? And maybe one of the ways I would answer that is we have museums because museums are great places to ask questions, to be curious, and to be able to find some answers to questions. Would you say that as well?
Absolutely the case. I feel like every time I go in any of the exhibitions, I have a lot of my questions answered, but I also walk away with so many more questions and so much more curiosity. And I'm able to carry that excitement out of the museum as well.
Great. So you're in the communications department. I tried to explain a little bit what a communications department is. The museum is a big place, and there's lots of kids out there that might not even know that we have a communications department. So how would you describe a communications department at the museum?
That's a great question. And I think actually, technically, I'm in the business and marketing department, but great. We work very closely with communications. And a lot of that work that we do is about being able to share what we have at the museum with the public. So establishing methods of communication. For me, that angle happens to take place not only on Google and things like that, but also with social media. So things like Instagram and Twitter and Facebook. And obviously those platforms, if any of you are on Facebook Live right now, as you'll know, they have messaging services where people can get in touch personally with us, which is a wonderful thing to be able to do and to offer on the public. Because sometimes if you feel like you're emailing something that says like communications at the museum, it doesn't feel very personal, but there really are people here, like me, who want to help you out and who want to get the answer to your questions. And sometimes those questions are very practical, like, how do I get to the museum? Or are there any tickets available? And those are great questions as well, which obviously we can help out with. But there are some really interesting questions too, which we'll talk about later.
So let's jump right into that.
Sure thing. Okay. I'm going to share my screen if that's okay.
Sure. And your video.
All right, let me see if I can fix that. Jenny, will you send that little prompt again? Perfect. I'm not back, am I?
That's okay. You can just keep going.
Okay, great. Okay, so I have a little PowerPoint that I'm sharing, and I just wanted to give a couple examples of the types of questions that we get asked about. Oh, there I am. And the short answer to that question is that everything. We get asked about everything. Like I said, we get asked about some things like museum opening times or how you can access RBCM at Home Kids. But we also get asked about exhibitions, we get asked about animals, we get asked about people who found something in their backyards. They want to ask us if we at the museum want it. So today we're going to talk about a couple of those sort of categories and examples of questions. And I'd love to hear everyone else's questions that they have too. So one question that we had recently, which was really exciting, was someone had seen some of our social media posts about old exhibitions in the museum. And they had messaged us saying that they remembered an exhibit called Open Oceans back in the late 1990s or early 2000s. And they were asking us if we had any photos of it or if, it was something that they had made up in their mind. And so we were able to go back into some of our photos and share this photo on the left. You can see it says Open Oceans there and Adventure into the Abyss. And we sort of dug up some history, and my colleague Wes, who is also a content marketer, but couldn't be here with us today, he was saying that he actually remembered when he was a kid that he remembered this exhibit, and there used to be a submarine that could take you down into a virtual experience. And that exhibition no longer exists. And today it's the photo on the right, which is our our ocean station, which is very different, but still very beautiful. And so it was really exciting because this person wanted to share a memory with us. And we were able to also, provide some of our own memories. And it was a really exciting opportunity to kind of reminisce with this person.
I'm wondering if anyone who's watching on Facebook Live, especially mostly adults who are watching, if you remember Open Ocean.
Yeah, please chime in. And if you have other photos or different memories of it, I'd love to hear. Feel free to share those on social media if you want to.
Because working in the gallery and working with visitors that come into when it's not a pandemic, I would often hear lots of people talk about Open Ocean and their experience of it, because it was like you were in a submarine going down into the water. And for some people that was really exciting, and some people it was really scary. And maybe partly because it was a little too scary for some people, that they decided to make it into Ocean Station, which is one of the more popular parts of the gallery. It's a great place to explore and lots of hands-on parts of the Ocean Station now.
Yes, that's exactly right. Yeah. I think one of the reasons they took the Adventure into the Abyss video down was because it was a bit spooky. So if anyone remembers that, I want to hear about it. Another example that happened recently was something really cool. We had an Instagram direct message from someone who happened to know a painter called Friesen. And this is 2 photos of him back in we think it's from the 70s. And he was the person who primarily painted a bunch of the murals in the natural history galleries. So some of you might recognize these. You can see that he's sort of standing in the paintings themselves, working on them. Next time you come to the museum, you should see if you recognize these, because these are pretty beautiful galleries that were hand painted. And so what happened was this person reached out to us on Instagram and asked us if we knew much about him or if we were still in contact with him. And we were able to be put in touch with them. And we hadn't, really been aware of his art for something like 50 years, which was so exciting. And it was an amazing opportunity for the museum to connect back with our own history and to be able to support an artist who was such a big part of creating these exhibitions. And these diorama backdrops, they are gorgeous and they're huge and they took so much work to create. So that was another kind of random but very exciting question that someone reached out to us to ask us about that, and we got to explore it.
And Bronwen, we have a comment from Deborah here on Zoom. It says, I remember the animal exhibit where there was a wooden staircase and you could touch animal hides. I missed it when it closed. I don't remember that, actually. I haven't heard of that, but it sounds fantastic. And then also Deborah asked, I wanted to know if there were items that move from exhibit to exhibit, like the mouse, quote unquote mouse. Not everyone knows about that, but there is a little tiny mouse that moves from gallery to gallery magically. And I don't know where the mouse is right now, but it's one of the sort of little things to look for when you come to the museum, that there's a mouse that sometimes is up in Old Town, sometimes it could even be in the seashore diorama like you see now. It moves around, which is fun. But as far as I know, Deborah, that's the only thing that moves around.
And I'd love to know more about that exhibition where you could touch the animal hides. That sounds fascinating. I'm not familiar with that one either, but if you know more, I'd love to know. Okay, so I wanted to give you these two examples.
We have old exhibits. We have people that used to work here making those connections. What's the next one, Bronwen?
That's right, but we also have questions coming in about new things. So I wanted to ask everyone who is participating, see this photo on the left? It's someone who's holding some little pieces of plastic that they might have picked up at the beach. And I was wondering, if you found these items at the beach, do you think that they are something that the museum would want?
So people can put in the chat or the comment section.
That's right.
Just saying that again, Bronwen, if they found the picture on the left, if they found those pieces, and if it's like little pieces of plastic?
That's right, yeah. I'm just wondering if people have reactions, because sometimes we find things on the beach or in our backyards that seem like they might be really meaningful and exciting. So I've got two examples for you here. So I'll reveal that the one on the left is just pieces of plastic. It's sad, but these are little items that wash up from the oceans all the time. And really, it's just trash. And so if you see them at the beach, it's awesome to pick them up and throw them away properly. But that's not something the museum would necessarily want, because it's very, very common. However, the image on the right, does anyone know what that is a photo of? Can let people guess?
So any guesses for the photo to the right? What are we looking at? What is that thing that we're looking at? Again, you could use the chat or the comment section. Even if it's like generally what you think it is. So someone says a jaw.
Ooh, great guess. Yeah, that's right. Okay, so it's the bottom jaw of an orca skull. So those big teeth all along the side there are orca teeth. And this skull is kind of brownish because they, when you find an orca carcass, one of the ways that you can make sure that all of the flesh is removed from it is you can bury it in a big compost heap. And then months and months later, when you take the bones out, they're all cleaned, but they retain some of that coloration from the compost heap. So that's an example of an orca skull. And I wanted to ask everyone if, in comparison to those little pieces of plastic, do you think that an orca skull is something that the museum might be interested in having if you found it on the beach?
Christiane says yes. Josh says
Awesome.
yes, yes with all capitals.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is an example of something that the museum may actually want. Um, and so I wanted to kind of bridge in there because often we get messages from people who have found something interesting, and they'll send us a message, maybe a photo of it, and they'll say, I found this cool thing in my basement or in my grandparents' attic, something like that. Would you like it? And which is a wonderful thing. We're so lucky to be in a museum where people feel like they can reach out to us and offer us things. But it's a very interesting process in terms of what the answer is going to be. So, and especially with things like bones or orca skulls or things like that that are natural, it is a different process to something that you might find in your grandparents' attic, like an old book or a postcard. But the guidelines on how we go about saying yes or no and thank you, the first questions we would want to ask you are, what does the item look like? Where is it? How did you find it? Or where did you find it? And also, do you know anything more about it? Like, where is it from? And all of those questions, we're trying to get at the answer of, is this item, is it unique in some way to British Columbia? Because we are the Royal BC Museum and we hold items that are specific and unique to the area that we're currently situated. But it's a very strange process because also sometimes we get messages and I just want to say yes immediately because people have cool things. They might have family heirlooms, they might have interesting photos, and that's really exciting to see what people find.
So Jeremiah has a good question. So, or it's not a question, a comment saying at the beach I found a crab shell. So maybe but it leads to a question in terms of like, when does it make sense to then go to the museum and say, are you interested in this?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll actually lead you over to my next slide as well. So sometimes people do reach out to us with a photo or a question about a species they saw or an item they saw, a plant, an animal. And it's awesome when people do that. They might send us a photo. And when it comes to things that are biological, like you saw a deer in your yard or you saw a crab on the beach or something like that, there is one tool that I would really recommend if you think it might be special to BC, but you're not really sure, you want some help identifying it before you reach out to the museum and say, would you like this? You can go to Inaturalist, which is an app, and you can find more information on there. But basically, it's a tool that allows you to take a photo of the species or object, and then that photo will get shared with other naturalists and scientists, including some people at the museum. And then you can discuss your findings. They can help you identify it. And often that is essentially what I end up doing sometimes too. If somebody messages me on Facebook and says, I need help identifying what this snake is, can you help? I might not know what it is at all. In fact, it's highly likely I do not know the answer to your question, but I'm excited to put you in touch with someone at the museum who might know. So this is another way that you can help yourself out and have a fun and engaging time getting the answer to a question like that. And there's also information on the website too.
And I would just to jump in there, Bronwen. So with Jeremiah, with a crab shell, if Jeremiah finds that this is a crab that is pretty common, like there are these kind of crabs that you would find on the beaches, say around Victoria, then the museum might not want something like that, but then you can maybe bring to your home and have in your own home museum. But say it was a crab that has never been found in Victoria. And it's the first time, like maybe it's a crab that's found in California, but it's never come this far north. Then that would be really interesting and unusual and something the museum would definitely be interested in knowing about.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And one of the things that I've talked about with Wes in terms of getting some questions about people finding things that maybe belong to their family, like old books or old items. It's such a valuable thing to have physical items that connect us to the past. So even if the museum says no thank you to your item, that doesn't mean throw it away, it's useless. It's such an exciting thing to be able to preserve your own history or your family history. So don't think that that makes it not a valuable item, even if we just say no thank you.
Totally. There are lots of different museums, the personal museums, and the Royal BC Museum is just one of those many museums.
Definitely. Okay, so next slide, I wanted to ask what your questions are, if there's anything that you've wanted to ask the museum. Yeah, what your favorite questions are. Or you can also ask questions about social media. I'm happy to talk about that too.
So just thinking about questions, just where you are right now, just think about like, what are maybe it's some questions about history, or maybe it's some questions about natural history. Maybe it's the last time you came to the museum and you saw something, you were curious about that. So Jeremiah asked, and there are deer bones in his backyard too. So both finding crab shells and deer bones. So Christiane says, how long did it take to build the woolly mammoth? It's a great question.
Yeah, that is a great question. That's one of my favorite things that I actually learned about here at the museum myself. And I posted about it. If you want to scroll back a little bit on the museum's Facebook or Instagram, there are some really, really cool photos of what that process was like of building the mammoth itself. And the short answer is I think that it took overall about 2 years to put the entire project together. But including repairs and touch-ups, I'm sure it's taken a long time outside of that as well. But yeah, the mammoth is one of our favorite objects, and the mammoth is not real in the sense that
just for everyone, because people might not have seen that question. So Tosh asked the question: is the woolly mammoth real?
And I guess that's a great question too, because the answer is both yes and no. No, the woolly mammoth is not a fossilized artifact that we dug out of the ground. It's actually made from a wire and wood sculpture, essentially, and then it's covered with muskox hide in little strips, and the tusks are fiberglass. So in terms of materials, the mammoth is not something that's totally organic, but it is made to replicate a mammoth that was found, I believe, in the US somewhere. And yeah, our model of Willie was created in, I think, 1978 and took a couple years. So last year we had celebrated Willie's 40th birthday. Some of you might remember that.
And one thing, so in the chat, and Jenny, if you don't mind putting that in the Facebook Live comment section as well, is the learning portal pathway around the mammoth. So it gives a little bit of history of the mammoth as well. And it's a really good question just to add on to continue on with how you're answering that, Bronwen, is that it's interesting in the diorama area, some of the rocks are real and some of the rocks are fake. Some of the ice is real and some of the ice is fake. And though the mammoth isn't real, right in front of the mammoth, there's a display case and there are real tusks there too. So it's a fun thing about the museum is that some things are real and some things are not. And like that picture of the man who was painting the diorama, sometimes it's hard to tell what's real and what's not real. Part of the magic.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love getting questions like that as well, because even if someone just messaged us and said, hey, how long did it take to build Woolly? Even if I don't know the questions off the top of my head, I'm so excited to help you find out, because that's a wonderful thing to be thinking about. And I love to be able to think about how long and how people go about building these exhibitions. It's something so special about the Royal BC Museum, and I've loved learning about the behind the scenes myself. Yeah, so keep them coming.
So we have a question all the way from Italy, from Giorgio, who said,
wow.
How many fossils are there in the museum?
Wow, another fantastic question. And full disclosure, I have no idea off the top of my head, but that's a great example of a question that I think I would be able to get the answer for. And I'm immediately thinking of a couple people that I might email for you to try to get that answer. Chris, you look like you're rapidly Googling as well. I know that we have about...
Who would you ask here at the...
I think I'd start with Victoria Arbor.
Yeah, who's the curator of paleontology here.
That's right.
So there are 60,000 specimens of fossils
wow.
in the paleontology collection. So in terms of fossils, and a whole range of different fossils. And one thing that I found when I first started working here, I always think of fossils as being dinosaurs, but there's actually not many dinosaurs in our collection here. A lot of the fossils are either plants or marine creatures. Oh, you're welcome, Giorgio. And actually, it's a really good question, Giorgio, too. And a lot of people ask, like, how many things do we have at the Royal BC Museum in terms of specimens and objects and belongings and documents and images? And it's kind of a hard one to answer because we don't fully know, but usually we say about 7 million things, which is a hard number. It's such a big number, it's hard to get a sense of that, but 7 million is crazy. So yeah, so those are really good questions. I get a lot of questions, Bronwen, of like, what's the biggest or what's the smallest in the collection? So what's the smallest thing in the collection and what's the biggest thing in the collection?
That's such a tough one as well, because if we go with the estimate of having 7 million items, not all of those items are kept in the same place, as you may know. So that image of what the museum looks like right now, I'm sitting in the tower that was on the right, but kind of right behind me and above me and all around me are collections where there are hundreds of thousands of objects. But we also have other storage facilities where we keep things like cars that are, much larger. So in terms of a discrete unit, it's really hard to answer.
Yeah, we also have huge canoes and huge totem poles that would almost like as long as the warehouse that we have. So, and then I don't know what the small, well, I guess maybe there are these tardigrades in the invertebrate collection that are fairly microscopic and but amazing creatures. So I think we do have tardigrades. And also there's fairy flies, which are like, you can't really even see them. They're so small in our entomology department. So I don't know if those are the smallest, but I know they're definitely one of the smallest. So another question in terms of real, is the cougar in the forest diorama real? Thank you for that question, Christiana.
Yeah, thank you. I also don't know the answer to that one off the top of my head. Chris, do you know?
The cougar is real, yes. Not real like alive. It's not alive anymore, but it was. So we call it a taxidermy specimen. It was alive, it lived a full life, and then it died and it came to the museum, and it was created in such a way, the bones were taken out, and it was created in such a way with wire to make it look like it's alive. But one of the things with taxidermy is that you can preserve skin and bones, but you can't preserve certain things like eyes. So the eyes of things like the cougar are actually often marbles or glass or some kind of other things. So it's mostly real with a little bit of things that are not real. But excellent question. And actually, a lot of times people don't even notice the cougar in the forest because it's kind of hiding off to the side. So we're just coming to the end right now, Bronwen. Thank you so much for, actually, if you want to stop sharing your screen and our faces could be a little bit bigger. Thank you so much, Bronwen. And like I said, you also look after the Twitter and Royal BC Museum Facebook and Instagram pages. So yeah, definitely suggest people going to those and looking over the last couple of weeks. Some really, really great content in terms of learning about the museum, and that was all shared by Bronwen. You get, every day there's some really interesting things to learn. So sometimes questions, you might not even think that you have questions, but then when you see things like that, then it sort of inspires curiosity. So thank you so much, Bronwen, for all that you're doing. And thank you so much for joining us today with RBCM at Home Kids. And again, everyone, I just will mention next week, we'll do a little tour of the museum galleries and look at some weird things. So sounds like we'll pass by the mammoth and the cougar, probably. Who knows, maybe the cougar will have, I don't know, like, what do you think? No, so this is my last question to everyone out there. If you were doing an April Fool's and you wanted to, we would ask you, how could you change the cougar to make it interesting for April Fools? What might you do? What might you do to the cougar? I have one thought, but. Oh, someone said put a hat on it. Yeah.
That's cute. Or maybe a little cat collar with a bell.
Ah, cat collar, nice one. The way it's sitting, it kind of looks like it's like ready for lunch. So maybe like a plate of food in front of it is a thought. Actually, one of our designers who's doing it wanted to have we have like a little miner's hat. So he wanted to borrow that. So that's going to be somewhere in the gallery. I don't know, but I was thinking maybe it was for the otter in the otter cave with the flashlight on. But apparently that's not it. Put a party hat on. Yeah, that's a great one. And then put a suit, a cougar suit. Yeah, I love it. So we'll see. He'll do something with the cougar. So you'll have to tune in next Wednesday to find out. I'll make sure that we at least go past the cougar, but there'll be lots of fun things to see next Wednesday. So thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Bronwen. Thank you, Jenny.
Thank you, everyone. And just again, please don't hesitate to reach out. Any message you want to send on social media, I'd love to hear from you anytime.
How can they reach out to you, Bronwen?
I would say best ways are on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook. If you send the museum a direct message of any kind, it will make its way either to me or to my colleague, Wes, and both of us are very, very happy to get in touch with you.
Okay, great. And if you're, as a kid, if you don't have, if you're not on social media at all, maybe your parents are, so you could ask them to send a question on your behalf. So we love hearing questions from kids, whether it's through parents or directly from kids. So
definitely.
All right. All right. Thanks, everyone. Bye.